Hello, and welcome to another episode of A Noob's Guide. At this point, it's a bit disingenuous to call me a Destiny noob, since I've been playing Destiny for a while now. But I like the title, and I'm probably still a noob, so I'm keeping it as is. It has come to my attention that some of my Destiny 2 friends don't actually know how to make an armor build. So today I'm going to go over the basics, and then show off my current PvP build for Season of the Splicer. The first thing I do when creating a new build is to figure out what type of activity I'm going to use the build in. Since this video is going to showcase my current PvP build, I'll give an example for that one. The first decision to make is that I'm actually going to make a PvP build instead of something for PvE. After I make the decision that this is a PvP build, I have to pick what subclass I want to run with this build. For me, my current favorite for a PvP build is Top Tree Dawnblade. Now that I have a rough idea of the purpose and subclass, the next part of my build process is selecting the weapons. I love the weapon ready animation on the Deadman's Tail Scout Rifle, so I'm going to put together this build around that weapon. Since I'm using a kinetic scout rifle as my primary, I want a energy shotgun for my secondary to provide coverage against people pushing me in close quarters. For this build, I'm going to go with the trusty Fellwinter's Lie, since it's still the best shotgun in the game even after the recent nerfs. In PvP, I don't generally care much about my heavy weapon, so I'm not going to worry about that during the build crafting process. Now that I've selected a subclass and the key weapons, the next step is determining what armor pieces to use. This is the part that some of my friends struggle with the most, so let's go into the details. The first thing I do whenever selecting armor is to figure out a rough priority for what stats I want to optimize for. The most important stat for all classes, but especially warlocks, is recovery, since it allows you to get back in the fight sooner and also recharges your rift faster. Top Tree Dawnblade has a lot of flexibility in the neutral game for the other stats, but I want to have a slight preference for discipline while also including a reasonable level of intellect and strength. The reason I prioritize discipline is that I want to be able to use my grenade for both damage and consuming them for heat rises. Finally, I want to make sure I have at least 50 points in resilience to help protect me against the 120 hand cannon meta. Now that I have a rough idea for the stat distribution I'm looking for, I need to actually pick the armor pieces. To pick armor, I use DestinyItemManager.com, and for this video, we'll do a demo. After going to DestinyItemManager.com, you can click Launch App. If you haven't used Destiny Item Manager before, you might need to authenticate with your Bungie account. The inventory panel is a useful view of your vault, but it isn't the focus of today's video. What's important for today's video is the Loadout Optimizer tab. The Loadout Optimizer is a tool that helps you find the perfect combination of armor from your vault to put into a build. The more armor you have in the vault, the better the tool can optimize. This is why I recommend all players to hoard as much high stat armor as possible. The rule of thumb I use is that any armor piece with a total of 60 points is going in my vault. When my vault gets full, I go through and delete pieces with the lowest total that don't have spiky distributions. The reason I look for spiky distributions is because those are the pieces that will allow you to min-max optimize for specific stats, like 100 recovery most easily. In the Loadout Optimizer, on the left side we can change the relative priority of the different stats. I'll put recovery as the highest and an intellect and discipline as the next two. This priority ordering doesn't impact which build I'm going to pick, but it impacts the order that the options are presented to me. In addition to viewing all possible armor combinations in your vault, you can also filter by a specific exotic piece to ensure that you only see results containing combinations that include that exotic. For this build, I wanted to have Ophidian Aspect because I want the snappy responsiveness that I'm used to with Quick Draw now that Fellwinter's Lie doesn't roll with Quick Draw anymore. I'll filter out the results using the top bar, specifying that I only want to see builds containing Ophidian Aspect. Now I can scroll through all of the options until I see a distribution of stats that looks like what I'm trying to find. Once I select my armor pieces, it's time to pick the armor mods. When picking armor mods, I usually start by selecting a few key mods that I want to definitely make space for in the armor. Then I'll fill in the gaps with the best mods for the slots remaining. For PvP builds, the key mods I want to make sure to include are Radiant Light, Powerful Friends, and High Energy Fire. Let's take a look at why. High Energy Fire gives a weapon damage boost whenever you are charged with light. Increased damage is always good, and converts situations where I have to 3-tap somebody with Deadman's Tail into 2 taps for a kill. Radiant Light gives allies a stack of charged with light whenever you cast your super. As a bonus, you also get a 20 strength stat boost. Powerful Friends gives your allies a stack of charged with light whenever you become charged with light. As a bonus, it also gives a plus 20 mobility stat boost. Now let's break down why this combination is good. By yourself, these mods don't do much for you. However, when you're combining these mods together in a team environment, it's a different story. Let's take a look at an example. Consider player A. They cast their super. Their allies, player B and player C, now become charged with light because of Radiant Light. Since player B and player C became charged with light, and they have Powerful Friends on, they pass another stack of charged with light to each other and to the person who cast the super. Now everybody on the team is charged with light. This means that they can all take advantage of high energy fire. This combination of the entire team having high energy fire active is extremely deadly in spawning restricted game modes like Trials of Osiris, and it's a staple of all top tier PvP builds. Unfortunately for me, Radiant Light hasn't been sold by Banshee or 801 since I started playing Destiny. As such, I'm stuck waiting around and saving space in my build for that mod, and as soon as it becomes available, I'll get it and slot it right in. In addition, to increase the uptime of high energy fire, I also include taking charge, just in case I don't have any allies running Radiant Light and Powerful Friends. At least then I can pick up Orbs of Power to give myself charge with light without relying on my teammates. Now that I have a rough idea of the key mods I want to include in my build, the next step is to determine which pieces of armor are going to hold which mods. This is where it gets a bit tricky. I generally start with my boots, because there is the least flexibility in that slot. I always run Traction, which is a zero cost mod that improves my sprint abilities. Since Traction is a zero cost mod, that means I have 10 energy left to spend across the other 3 slots. This is why I usually pick the most expensive pieces to stick on the boots. For this build, that would be a Recovery mod and High Energy Fire, since they both cost 4 energy. I then fill in the remaining space with a Shotgun Scavenger mod to make sure I always have shotgun ammo. Since none of these mods have an elemental affinity, I could choose any element for these boots, but I generally pick Arc, since it gives me future flexibility if I want to swap High Energy Fire with Powerful Friends on the boots. For Season of the Splicer, the next piece I focus on is the arms. This is because Season of the Splicer has a Scout Rifle Loader mod for only 1 energy. This means I have space on my arms for another Recovery mod and Powerful Friends, in addition to double Scout Rifle Loaders. Because I'm including Powerful Friends on my arms, that means the elemental affinity of this piece needs to be Arc. Moving on to the helmet, I definitely want to have targeting mods in this loadout, so I'll include both a Scout Rifle targeting mod and a Shotgun targeting mod. This leaves me with 4 energy slots left. Since at this point I already have 100 recovery, I don't need to spend the space on a recovery mod. Instead, I'm going to put Radiant Light on my helmet, which is another Arc Affinity mod. As I already mentioned, Radiant Light has not been sold since I started playing Destiny, so as a temporary holdover, I just throw Taking Charge in the slot, but really that slot should have Radiant Light in it. This will give me a total of 9 energy spent, and only space for 1 energy left. In this last slot, I'll use a half discipline mod. Luckily, the armor pieces I picked out for this build had 46 discipline, so a half discipline mod brings me to another full tier of discipline. Next, I set up my bond. Since I want to have a lot of grenades, I'm going to run double bomber on my bond. This will require a solar affinity bond and consume 4 energy total. That leaves me with space for both a 3 energy combat mod and a 3 energy stat mod, which perfectly fits my actual taking charge slot and another discipline mod. Finally, for the chest piece, I want to have double unflinching scout rifle mods. Since there are no more combat mods that I'm interested in running, I add yet another discipline mod to get my discipline up to 71 points total. Since I have 1 energy left, I added the Season of the Splicer blast radius mod, just in case my rocket launcher happens to get a double kill, I'll get a stack of charged with light. Trying to figure out which mods should go on which piece of gear is a lot of trial and error. Even though I told a story just now about how each piece of armor gets certain mods, that isn't what happens when I'm first putting together a build. What I actually do is open up a text document and start playing around by moving mods into different places until I get all of the pieces to fit. And now you know everything. This is the current PvP build that I use for Quick Play Crucible, Iron Banner, and Trials of Osiris. Now let's summarize everything that I went over in this video. First, when making a build, make sure you have a purpose. Decide what activities you want this build to be used in and focus on those. You can have multiple builds and switch your armor depending on the activity you're going into. Second, when picking armor, definitely use Destiny Item Manager. As long as you're hoarding a sufficient variety of pieces, Destiny Item Manager should be able to help you find the perfect stat distribution that you're looking for a build. Third, start with a few key armor mods and then slowly expand based on which mods are most important to you. It will take a few tries to figure out how to get everything to fit, but eventually you'll be able to get the pieces to fit together. I'm currently carrying 5 different builds on my character, and I plan on making more videos to go over the rest of the builds that I'm using for different activities. Hopefully this video gave you an overview of the process I take, but if you still have questions, let me know and I'll try to include answers in a future video.
Keep it up, and victory is yours. 1 minute. You have this. Them more than they killed you. That's all I ask. But keep telling the truth. Please. Who's better than you?